Mr. Chairman, beloved fellow Bahá'ís from all over the world, and welcome guests. This is indeed a joyous occasion, a great jubilee. It's a pity that so much of the world is unhappy. My task is to tell you a little bit about why it is so unhappy, and also to tell you how it can become happy again. This age in which we are living has been called an age of nuclear giants. Nuclear giants, but ethical midgets. We have been described as material monsters and moral dwarfs. We can arrest cancer, cure tuberculosis, fly faster than sound, split the atom, conquer space. But we're unable to control the emotions of even one single man. We're helpless when we try to remedy those prejudices of flag, complexion, pocketbook, or prayer. Clever as we are, we cannot create a political penicillin that will reduce this fever of hatred or suspicion. And unhappily, we have no moral antibiotic to protect us against bribery, corruption, hypocrisy, or deceit. We cannot isolate the bacillus of indifference. There are no surgeons we can find who can operate and remove bigotry. We cannot even inoculate ourselves and the public against greed, ambition, power, and dishonesty. And thus, here we are, the victims of our own genius in dealing with matter and of our own stupidity in dealing with men. And this is why they call us nuclear giants, but ethical midgets. We spend billions more each year on liquor than we spend on education. We spend billions more each year on cosmetics than we do on education. We spend billions more on entertainment, billions more on every form of pleasure. We have streamlined, multicolored cars in profusion on the streets in empty lots when around the world people do not have housing. We have an endless variety of alcoholic and carbonated beverages, while all over the world there are people who don't have milk for their children. Suicide has become, if you don't know, not a monthly, a daily, even an hourly tragedy, but a minute-by-minute catastrophe. And these deaths by self-destruction are not among the old, the feeble, and the helpless. A great and alarming proportion are among the young people who supposedly have their lives still before them. But they can see no future, no way out. And if these souls who took their own lives were all to do so by means of a gun instead of the various methods that they choose, and you were within earshot, it would sound like a pitched battle around the clock, hour after hour, as they look for some kind of refuge in this disillusioned world. Thousands who escape the refuge of alcoholism, thousands who don't fall victim to serious mental diseases, spend millions of dollars and millions of hours at the offices and on the so-called couches of modern psychiatry. For as we know, in this world, the psychiatrist has been enthroned. And the patient, before he pushes the last panic button on himself, tries to do anything possible to rescue himself, take every step to adjust himself to this world in which he lives. But in spite of sincere psychiatrists, maladjusted man is trying to adjust himself to a maladjusted world. And as he does so, he can't realize that a smooth adjustment to a deformed society can only create a deformed human being. And so he is lost. The following figures that I share with you are from the United States, as you might guess. However, they're very well reflected in the world picture as well. Official records show that mental hospitals are filled to overflowing, more crowded than ever before in history. No room for patients that need help, and these pitiful creatures are released before they are cured. They are sent back, still mentally warped, into the very world that took away their future. One mental health organization reports that there are now more mental patients in many of the hospitals than all other patients combined. Alcoholism, we are told, has surpassed even mental illness as a critical problem of our age. In fact, so prevalent is this sickness that there are far more in need of treatment from alcoholism than from all mental diseases combined. So many, there's no possible way to give them treatment. They come to the door and they're turned away and sent back into the streets. So thus, you see, we have become a pleasure-seeking rather than a truth-seeking people. Baha'u'llah teaches that we should be both in balance. Baha'u'llah has written that we should be balanced, mature human beings, that we should extract all the throbbing joy and wonder and ardor out of life. We should live a full, rich, useful life of happiness, surrounded by the warming love of our families and our fellow man. But, unhappily, we have become a profit-making civilization rather than a welfare-producing civilization. We should be both, Baha'u'llah teaches, in balance. When we are out of touch, as our first speaker has said, with the world of God and the world of the Spirit, this is our illness. This is our difficulty. We have turned our back upon God, and as a consequence, even maybe unwittingly, we have turned our back upon our fellow man. In our pleasure-seeking and our profit-making, we have lost our balance. We have lived by the sense of the gratification of our senses for so long, we've become numb to the spiritual things and to the other pleasures and have lost our balance. We've lost the comfort of a confident belief in God, in home, in the family, and in the loving friendship of our neighbors and in the simple things of life. Technical development has shriveled this world of ours into a marble. There is no place in the world now that's not within range of the hawk. And within these shrunken borders, mankind watches as in the storybook of old. He looks upon the doors of the world's council chambers as they gather, as in the storybook of old, with glances of fear and worry, and he doesn't know who is going to come out, the lady or the tiger. Men and women now, many walks of life, are beginning to wonder if perhaps we haven't paid too dearly for these great material gains of ours. Gains which in one moment of caprice on the part of the world's leaders could be swept aside, leaving the world in ashes. Visionless and unshepherded on a world scale, man's very plight acknowledges his spiritual bankruptcy. He patches up his outer wounds while his inner fire flickers and dies a little every day. So where can we turn? Where is our hope? Where can we find our world unity with security? Can science save us? Politics? Government? United Nations? Education? Economics? Religion? These are all that we have. Which will we choose? Where can we hope to find a power or a force vital and strong enough to rescue the world from an onrushing disaster? Let us try. Which shall we choose? Science? Well, science is neither good nor evil. It is neutral. It diminishes the death rate of individuals on one hand by perfecting a wonder drug or a serum, and then it destroys multitude by fashioning atomic weapons. Science can be used either for constructive or destructive purposes. It depends upon the moral conscience of the men who use it. It is an instrument, not an operator. Science is a ship, and so it is not the master pilot of our hopes. What next? Politics? Which party of a house or a planet divided? Or in some lands, not only divided, but cut into multiple pieces. Politics has been called the degenerate son of an illustrious father, statesmanship. And in spite of many noble public servants who endeavor to uphold the honor of politics, this corrupted, splendid father has become a wastrel, this corrupted son of a splendid father, has become a wastrel who is given over now to policy, pickings, expediency, preservation of position. Too often politics has abandoned virtue and has forsaken its task of building a refuge for the welfare of all humanity. Politics, all too often, is a mortally sick and dying patient and not a doctor at all. It certainly is not our master physician nor the healer of all our ills. Government, which democratic, communistic, dictatorship, republican, so on. Almost every government has something that is of value, much that is heroic, and a little that is wonderful. Some governments certainly seem preferable to others. But again, the beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and it depends on the condition of the birth or the environment or the circumstances of a man's life in his birth. And even where the form seems highly desirable, unhappily the inner spirit is often no longer alive. Or if it is alive, it is no longer pure. Far too many governments of our time have been revolts against past injustices. They were remedies applied to a particular illness in a specific part of the body of the world during a specialized time in history. Once the fault was corrected, these governments lost their value in dealing with problems of a later and a developing age. Leaders of such governments sometimes concern themselves too much with preserving their own status, regardless of the needs of the time in which they live. And thus these revolts against injustice crystallize into what are taken falsely to be truths of an enduring value. But they are remedies which they removed an illness or a disease at one time in history, but now have no application for a recovered patient. There is no single government at the present time that has so captured the imagination, the devotion, and the allegiance of all the other nations of the world, so that peoples everywhere are ready and willing to set aside their lesser loyalties in order to love, obey, and serve such a world government. Government alone cannot save us. Any plan that is less than planetary in this age is doomed to failure. Sectarian, limited viewpoints are meaningless in an age where unity is essential for our very survival. So what next? The United Nations? What has been said about government is true about the United Nations as well, to a degree. The United Nations was once the darling of our hearts, the hope of the world, as was the League of Nations before it. No one will deny the wonderful accomplishments of the United Nations, the fires it has cooled, the threats it has averted or delayed, the triumphs of the United Nations in the field of world health, of banking, science, economic assistance, and such allied fields is unquestioned and greatly to be admired. But in the very field in which the United Nations can give us world unity with security, our old friend politics eats away at the framework day by day. Veto, walkout, withdrawal, all these are constant threats to its success. The United Nations can consult, can make decisions, and does in many wise ones. Yet it does not have the world authority without exception to enforce its majority decisions on all members. And like the cat in Aesop's fable that was allowed to go to the banquet dressed as a beautiful damsel if it would behave itself, so do the world leaders go to the conference tables. But once the mouse of spoils or power or position runs across the table, zoom, they become a cat again. So from a world viewpoint, in some unhappy respects, the printer who made the unfortunate error with his linotype machine at San Francisco on the day of the signing of the United Nations Charter was prophetic. He misplaced the I, and instead of writing the United Nations, he typed the untied nations. and the knot is slipping day by day and must quickly be fastened more tightly. So the United Nations alone and unaided cannot save us. It can delay, it can soften, but it cannot prevent the all-consuming crisis that slowly, resistlessly approaches. Economics? Is there an economic plan that can rescue the world? Certainly the phrase has often been parroted, heal the economics and you heal all. But the bitter truth is that a wholesome economics is not the result of a civilization, is the result of a civilization, not the cause of it. In order to have a wholesome economics, we must first heal the social relationships of the world so that there is cooperative effort. If a family will not live together in love and in unity and cooperation, the income necessary to support it is doubled, trebled, sometimes quadrupled. And this is equally true of the family of nations. No member of a united, loving family would live in warmth and luxury in one room of a house while the father or the mother or the child or the husband lay ill and dying in another room. This is also true of the house of nations, the planet in which we live. Therefore, if we would heal the economics of the world, we must first heal its social relationships that divide and separate us. We must pour out our resources for the things that will bring about a life-sustaining, a hope-creating standard of living for all men, all over the planet, who are all our brothers. We must not bankrupt ourselves for weapons of destruction that split and annihilate us. So this means we must have a moral or a spiritual remedy. If we'll heal the economics of the world, we must first heal their social relationships. For a healthy economics is a result, not a cause. And therefore, economics cannot be applied as a remedy to heal itself. Education. Can education save us? Certainly it can help. But the crisis in which we find ourselves at the present time is a moral crisis, not an intellectual crisis. Education can guarantee knowledge, but it cannot guarantee wisdom. The most intellectually brilliant scholars can be cruel, selfish, and unjust, and their education cannot be depended upon to make them generous or to make them loving or to give them justice. Some of our so-called most civilized nations have proved to be the most ruthless and barbarous. So while education is an essential ingredient in establishing a better world, it obviously is not the master architect we are seeking. It cannot save us. So what is left? Religion. All right. Which? Christian? Jewish? Muslim? Hindu? Buddhist? Zoroastrian? If Muslim, which sect? Sunni or Shia? If Jewish, which? Orthodox, Reformed, or Conservative? If Christian, which branch? Catholic or Protestant? If Catholic, which? Roman or Greek Orthodox? If Protestant, which of the several hundreds of existing sects? In each religion there is beauty, and there is truth, and there is power. But collectively there is no unity. None finds universal acceptance by all the others. There is no ecumenical conference that calls for the organic unity of the Jew with the Christian, of the Christian with the Muslim, or the Hindu with the Buddhist. The door has been closed and the way has been barred, for the view is limited. A fair-minded man would never belittle the personal comfort which each of these great religions brings to the individual. Yet, neither would he deny their apparent helplessness in dealing effectively with the problems facing our present age, let alone with their internal problems of establishing unity with each other. Religion is like a honeybee. Once it flitted from flower to flower, it sipped nectar. It manufactured honey with which it could nourish mankind. And as time passed on, the spider of intolerance, of bigotry, and of ritual fastened on the bee and sucked out all its vital juices until no longer it was a living thing. Yet from the outside it looked alive. It had its body, it had its stripes, it had its wings, it had its eyes, its legs, its antenna. It had everything, but it was only a shell of its once living, holy, sacred reality. This is what has happened to religion as time has gone by. It is still an object of attraction, but not of service. Its honey-making days are gone, and it can no longer administer to the needs of the people. It is a shell, beautiful but lifeless. If the human body is cut up into pieces, it soon perishes. We know that. And this is equally true of religion. If it is dismembered into bits, it cannot even heal the wounds in its own body. How then can it hope to bind up the broken limbs of a skeptical and a disbelieving society? Well then, that's all been rather discouraging. For what hope remains to us if science, government, the United Nations, politics, education, economics, and religion all fail us? What do we do? Our dying world is beating on every door, begging for a cure. It longs for the doctor who can heal it. Our poor world, Baha'u'llah has said, has fallen into the hands of unskilled and unscrupulous physicians who have no knowledge of the remedy. They are gloating over the expected fee. Discouraged, disillusioned, and desperate, man stands once more on the brink of an all-encompassing disaster, the end of an age. And he longs for the doctor who can save his life. Well, my purpose in being here tonight is to recommend to you just such a physician, a specialist for the seemingly incurable present-day diseases, and to share with you the skills, the cures he has already wrought, and not on an individual scale, but in every part of our divided planet. He has healed century-old prejudices. He has united peoples who were avowed enemies. He has blended the hearts of those who bowed in the past at separate altars. And his name is Baha'u'llah, the glory of God. And it is especially fitting that these words should be spoken here tonight in this historic edifice, the Royal Albert Hall in London, this richly blessed land. Great Britain has had a very prominent part in the rise and development of the Baha'i faith, a faith which the famed master of Balliol, Benjamin Jowett, described as the greatest light to come into the earth since the days of Jesus the Christ. It was another renowned British scholar, Professor Edward Granville Browne of Cambridge, who was so moved by the story of the Baha'i faith and the life of Baha'u'llah that he said he could not rest until he went to the Holy Land and visited Baha'u'llah. And he wrote and said, "I feel it my duty as well as pleasure to bring the matter to the attention of my countrymen concerning this faith." Jowett echoed these feelings. He declared that the faith of Baha'u'llah was too great and too near for this generation to understand it. The future alone, he said, will comprehend its import. Well, that future is now, tonight, here in Albert Hall, for there is a new generation here to hear the words of Baha'u'llah. And you have the golden opportunity, in the words of Professor Browne himself, to earn the thanks of posterity by bringing this story of hope and comfort not only to your own countrymen, but to the entire world which now lives in such dire need of succor. Baha'u'llah, nearly a century ago, addressed a message to Her Royal Highness, Her Majesty Queen Victoria. The only solution to the ills of the world, he said, is the union of all its peoples in one universal faith, one common cause. To this mother of parliaments, he addressed an entreaty to redress the ills of the world. Baha'u'llah warned the kings and rulers of the world that their subjects were their trust, their jewels, that they held their destinies in the palm of their hands and treated them as less than the dust under their feet. He said unless the rights of the downtrodden were protected, the winds of despair and affliction would assail these rulers from all sides, and they would be swept from their thrones and toppled to the earth. They would fall from their place of honor, he said, and their dynasties would disappear from the face of the earth. Baha'u'llah called upon them to limit their armaments, to unite in a common effort toward world peace. Summon the nations to God, he declared to them. Summon them to their true destiny, to their human destiny, and not to an animal destiny. Baha'u'llah's call for world government, for world peace, and for justice for all the children of men was directed to the Habsburg, Napoleon III, the Hohenzollerns, the Romanovs, the Ottomans of Turkey, and to the Qajar dynasty of Persia. None made any response to his appeal, only silence. Queen Victoria alone, it is said, made a reply, saying of the message of Baha'u'llah, "If this is of God, it will endure." It has endured. The faith of Baha'u'llah has now covered the surface of the planet. It has gone from strength to strength. And at the same time, all of these kings and their dynasties have disappeared from the pages of history, except one alone, that of her whom Baha'u'llah addressed as, "O Queen in London." The son of Baha'u'llah, Abdul-Baha, was knighted by the British government because of his humanitarian acts of charity and compassion during the First Great War. He prevented the suffering and starvation of Christians, Jews, Muslims, Druzes, people of all religions, as well as Bahá'ís in Palestine. It was a British scholar and Christian clergyman, Dr. T.K. Cheney, who described Abdul-Baha as an ambassador to humanity. When the enemies of the faith of Baha'u'llah during that same war threatened to raze to the ground the tomb of Baha'u'llah and crucify Abdul-Baha, it was the energetic steps taken by the Bahá'ís of Great Britain which frustrated their plans. Lord Curzon and others in the British cabinet were advised of the critical situation. The prompt intervention of Lord Lamington made possible an immediate note to the Foreign Office, which explained the importance of Abdul-Baha's religious position in the world. The Foreign Secretary, Lord Balfour, on the day of the receipt of this letter, sent to General Allenby a dispatch instructing him to extend every protection and consideration to Abdul-Baha, his family, and his friends. A cablegram was later sent to London by General Allenby after the capture of Haifa. He requested the authorities to, in his words, notify the world that Abdul-Baha is safe. The grandson of Baha'u'llah, Shoghi Effendi Rabbani, guardian of the Baha'i faith, descended from the founder of our faith, Baha'u'llah, as well as from the herald of our faith, the Bab, lies entombed in this land just to the north of the city of London. He was laid to rest there when he passed away in the midst of his heroic efforts to assure the success and completion of the great spiritual world crusade upon which the Bahá'ís have been embarked for the past 10 years. This crusade has come to a triumphant conclusion this week, and we are joyfully celebrating that event tonight here in London. More important, we are commemorating the 100th anniversary of the beginning of Baha'u'llah's announcement to the world that he was the promised one of all religions. Abdul-Baha twice visited England. Here in the City Temple of London, Abdul-Baha first raised his voice in the West to proclaim the message of his father, Baha'u'llah, to the world. Abdul-Baha wrote in the Holy Bible of that temple, "This is the sacred book of God." Two of the most famous Baha'i writers, Dr. John E. Esselmont of Scotland and George Townsend, former canon of St. Patrick's Cathedral in Dublin and Archdeacon of Clonfert, have greatly enriched the contribution of this part of the world to the history of the Baha'i faith. Surely the time is long past when Great Britain should have recognized the unique part it has played, is now playing, and has yet to play in the rise of the faith of Baha'u'llah. It is for this purpose, and to hasten the day when the people of the British Isles will rally in great numbers to the banner of the Baha'i faith, that I am speaking to you tonight in Albert Hall. Another royal sovereign, a follower of Baha'u'llah and granddaughter of Queen Victoria, has written, "If ever the words of Baha'u'llah come to your attention, do not put them from you, but let their life-bringing, love-creating message sink into your heart as they have into mine." We hope you will follow that advice, for since those words were spoken, the message of Baha'u'llah has indeed touched the hearts of men and women in every continent and on the islands of all the seas. However, do not be misled. The Baha'i faith is not a philosophy. It is not a way of life. It is not an ethical society. It is not a sect. It is not an offshoot of any other religion. It is a religion of God. A religion with its roots deep in that same sacred soil from which came the faith of Moses, Jesus, and the prophets of the past. During a lifetime dedicated to the welfare of humanity, Baha'u'llah was exiled like Abraham, stoned like Moses, scourged like Christ. Baha'u'llah suffered repeated attempts on his life. He underwent nearly half a century of persecution, imprisonment, and exile. Kings and potentates have tried to destroy him and to prevent his faith story from being told. All of them have failed. Baha'u'llah's sun has risen while theirs has set. The Jewish prophet Ezekiel, himself an exile and prisoner, experienced a remarkable vision by the banks of the ancient river Chebar, not far from the city of Baghdad. Ezekiel said he saw one like unto the glory of God, and that he, Ezekiel, fell to the ground numb. And this same Ezekiel prophesied that the glory of God, the glory of the Lord, would come to the Holy Land from the east by way of the gate. This great event, Baha'u'llah's journey from the east, from the river Chebar to the Holy Land, began 100 years ago this week. Baha'u'llah, whose name in English means the glory of God, proclaimed his mission to the world near the site of the ancient river Chebar in a garden outside Baghdad near the banks of the Tigris. And then Baha'u'llah began an enforced journey as a prisoner and in exile. This journey led him at last to come from the east to the Holy Land, Palestine, and Baha'u'llah's herald and forerunner was called the Bab, which means in English, the gate. Baha'u'llah has come from Persia, as prophesied by Jeremiah, Daniel, and the ancient Hebrew writings, as foretold by Micah with such breathtaking accuracy. Baha'u'llah came to Israel from the land that was once in the ancient kingdom of Assyria. He came exactly as foretold, step by step, a prisoner and an exile, from mountain to mountain, from sea to sea, even from the fortress to the river. In one of the most astonishing and incredible stories of the fulfillment of prophecy that religious history has ever known. It has taken an entire volume to tell the story of this remarkable event. After Baha'u'llah's coming to Palestine, Israel, the desert blossomed as the rose, as promised by Isaiah. And as foretold by the same Isaiah, Baha'u'llah did feed his flock and does feed his flock from the midst of Carmel. For from the side of that holy mountain, Baha'u'llah's teachings are even now flowing out into nearly 14,000 centers in all parts of the world. Baha'u'llah was descended from Abraham, as our first speaker told you. He was of the seed of Abraham. Like Abraham, Baha'u'llah was exiled from the valley of the Tigris and the Euphrates to the land of Canaan, a land which God had promised in Scripture would be inherited by one of Abraham's seed in the last days. And now, there on the side of Mount Carmel, across the bay of Haifa from Mecca, both of which were once in the ancient land of Canaan, are found the holy places of the Bahá'í faith, both its spiritual and its administrative world center. Is it any wonder that the famous British Bible scholar and Christian clergyman, Dr. T.K. Cheney, should write, "If there is any prophet in recent times, it is to Baha'u'llah that we must turn." After what Beloved friends, after what you have already heard tonight, ask yourself, on your way home tonight and as you retire, where else in all the world today will you find a force similar to that of the Baha'i faith, the faith of Baha'u'llah? A force capable of uniting the world's religions, not as a confederation, keeping their old differences, tolerating each other temporarily until the crisis passes, but as one religion, restoring the original purity of each, connecting, unifying, and fulfilling their promises, not as a utopian dream, but as a practical reality, a religion that preserves the eternal truths of all faiths, but keeps its feet on the ground, moves forward with the time, and earns its keep. A religion that meets the problems of the age with confidence and with answers. A religion that offers convincing remedies, that sheds light upon man's problems now in this world at this time when he needs it, and not in some vague and future world. Ask yourself tonight, where else in all the world today can be found a force capable of unifying the world's nations? Not as a confederation, keeping their old differences, tolerating each other in fear until the crisis passes, but as one country, one great world commonwealth, preserving the varieties which beautify and enrich our life on the planet, but united in the organic tools that make it possible for us to live and work together in a universal democratic commonwealth. Ask yourself tonight, where else in all the world today will you find another force capable of unifying the people of every skin color, not in racial amity, not in tolerance, for these are negative things which imply an underlying difference, which a so-called superior soul is smugly willing to overlook, even while it insinuates a subtle separation. This is not a religion which believes in unity of various complexions arrived at in desperation, a temporary pact subscribed to in fear until the crisis passes. The Baha'i faith is a religion that believes, teaches, and practices in its schools, in its homes, in its social affairs, and on the street, as well as in its heart, that a man's place in life depends upon his talents, his initiative, his character, and not upon his pigmentation of skin, whatever color it may be. For man's differences of skin color to the Baha'i are elements of pleasing variety and no longer factors of difference and prejudice. Ask yourself, where else in all the world today can be found a force capable of implanting moral responsibility so that science can be used for our benefit rather than our destruction? A force that can restore statesmanship to politics and government so that we can be ruled by the most fit administrators. A force that can give to education that much needed impetus toward ethical and moral knowledge so the students can make moral decisions, wise decisions, value decisions. A force that heals the social relationships of the world by removing the prejudices, so there is a basis for a wholesome economics, and that it becomes not only possible but inevitable. A force that can bind up the broken limbs of a crushed body of religion and restore its beauty, its holiness, and its unity. Surely, this is what you have been looking for all of your life. And do you not feel instinctively in your heart that perhaps Baha'u'llah is the physician that you have been waiting for, the one who has brought the remedy that can heal the ills of the world? These are not vague hopes. They're not aspirations. They are not dreams. These are working realities. They have been tested. In this very hour, as we sit here, they are being demonstrated successfully in the greatest workshop of all, the hard to live in, hard to get along in world. The proof of this miracle, this power, this force of Baha'u'llah, can be seen here before your eyes this week in London during this first great Baha'i World Congress. It can be seen here tonight before your eyes in the tiers of this hall. There are present here members from national Baha'i assemblies representing over 250 major countries, sovereignties, and dependencies of the world. Thousands of new followers are entering the Baha'i faith each year. They are attracted by its message of oneness and love. So rapid has the spread of the Baha'i faith become that it is impossible to keep abreast of its growth. Any statistics given this week are obsolete the next. There are houses of worship on every continent, and in them are read the sacred writings of all the great religions. In these temples, the messengers of all religions are honored and revered. Just 9 days ago, a unique and historic event took place on the site of Mount Carmel in Israel, the Holy Land, the nest of the prophets. So rapid and widespread has been the growth of the Baha'i faith that the members of its national assemblies, representing Baha'is from all parts of the world, gathered together to elect the first international Baha'i body, their supreme administrative body, called for by the pen of Baha'u'llah himself. Baha'u'llah's faith, as he planned it, as he conceived it a century ago, now exists on a local, a national, and an international basis. In this great world election can also be seen another fulfillment of the ancient prophecy of Habakkuk, who said that the knowledge of the glory of the Lord shall cover the earth as the waters cover the sea. That hour has indeed come, and the knowledge of Baha'u'llah, the glory of the Lord, has circled the earth. Over 6,000 Baha'is have gathered in London this week, celebrating the declaration of Baha'u'llah. From all parts of the planet they are here, rich and poor, black and white, red, brown, yellow, Baha'is who were Christian, Jewish, Buddhist, Hindu, Zoroastrian, pagan, atheistic, agnostic, and skeptic. Baha'is who, although history made them enemies, under Baha'u'llah they have dedicated their lives to laying a worldwide foundation which they are confident can bring about the welfare, peace, and happiness of the entire human race. This cross-section is here tonight. And as Mr. Hainsworth told you, they represent not only the peoples of the great cultural and materialistic centers of East and West, but all peoples, each with its own noble contribution to make, from Africa, Asia, Europe, Australia, North and South America. Among them are National Assembly delegates representing Maori, Bushmen, American Indian, Native Islanders, Eskimos, African tribesmen, Aborigines, Pygmies. And among these Baha'is you will find scholars, scientists, doctors, professors, day laborers, every segment of society. Indeed, it is the day of the one fold and the one shepherd. All have gathered here to glorify the name of the founder of their faith, Baha'u'llah. They are rejoicing in his message of love and oneness and justice for all the peoples of the earth. They are commemorating an event which began in all its rich beauty 100 years ago. The world is longing for unity. The unifier Baha'u'llah is calling out to you. The world is dying from a lack of love. The physician Baha'u'llah is holding forth the remedy. Therefore, the Baha'is of the world on this occasion invite you to join them in their great undertaking, the spiritual conquest of the planet. They urge you to investigate this exciting challenge. They offer you the joy of learning how Christian and Jew, black and white, east and west, have found peace of mind and satisfaction of soul in every part of the world. And then you will understand why the Baha'is are so radiant, why they are so filled with inner peace, security, and conviction, and why they are so confident that poverty, ignorance, prejudice, and despair can be removed from the world by means of this great social and spiritual instrument, the unifying faith of Baha'u'llah. Look into everything with the searching eye of truth, Baha'u'llah declared, for the greatest gift of God to man is his intelligence. Tonight we bring you the joyous news, the glad tidings, that the one foretold in all your holy books has come. We invite you to hear his voice, to listen to his claims, to study his teachings from the more than 100 volumes he has written. And if he, Baha'u'llah, is indeed the promised one, to arise and to serve him with all the ardor of your heart. For then our troubled and disillusioned world may at last have world unity with security, world peace with confidence, confidence in the destiny of the human race. So let us no longer remain a society of nuclear giants and ethical midgets. Let us work together to become both nuclear giants and ethical giants as well. Let us be at last the children of God and not of man. May I close with these words of Baha'u'llah. The vitality of man's belief in God is dying out in every land. Nothing short of his wholesome medicine can ever restore it. The corrosion of ungodliness has eaten into the vitals of human society. What else but the elixir of his potent message can cleanse and revive it? The whole human race is encompassed with incalculable afflictions. We see it languishing on its bed of sickness, sore tried and disillusioned. They that are intoxicated by self-conceit have interposed themselves between it and the divine physician. Witness how they have engulfed all men, themselves included, in the mesh of their devices. They can neither discover the cause of the disease, nor have they any knowledge of the remedy. The Word of God alone can claim the distinction of being endowed with the capacity required for so great, for so far-reaching a change. Strive ye, therefore, to save man's life through the wholesome medicine which the almighty hand of the unerring physician hath prepared. Address yourselves to the well-being and the tranquility of the children of men. Blessed is he who mingleth with all men in a spirit of utmost kindliness and love.